I'm willing to say he's the basement coach of the year.
Two games, they're gonna get something rolling.
This is the Sports Saga podcast, and it is presented by Al Dias Electric. Hello, everyone, and a big thank you for joining us today. Brady Kudo, Keegan Hamlet's back, and he's better than ever. And our guest is one of the voices of St. John's University, and he's also a play-by-play announcer for the NFHS Network. KEVIN ConneLly is with us today. KEVIN, welcome. Thank you for being here. And how are you?
I'm doing great, guys. Thanks for having me. Really excited to talk to you this morning.
All right, so let's dive right into this. Play-by-play announcer. And again, we continue to expand our network with play-by-play announcers, and KEVIN is a great addition to that list. So let's dive into your career a little bit. Take us through maybe your reasoning why you wanted to become a play-by-play announcer and where you are now, how you got to where you are now.
So I guess it's pretty funny. No, as a young kid, big baseball fan. I still am a big baseball fan. And I'm from the New York, New Jersey area. So grew up a Yankee fan. Keegan, I know you're probably not happy about that looking at your background.
That's all right.
That's okay. It's okay. You're cool.
So I thought I was going to be the next Derek Jeter. Find out I'm not going to be the next Derek Jeter, but I knew I still wanted to be in sports because I loved sports. I loved everything. So what's the next best thing to playing shortstop for the Yankees? Well, it's broadcasting sports. So once I realized that I wasn't going to be the next Derek Jeter, and I feel like every person eventually has that, except a select few around the country. That's kind of how I jumped into wanting to be in sports broadcasting, sports media. And then it's just a slow progression from there, and learning everything that goes into it. In high school, like there wasn't really any sports media classes. I was still just kind of finishing out my final days of my playing career and playing high school sports and whatnot. But then when I got to college, which I went to St. John's University, you join the school's radio station, and that's when you have your own weekly radio show. And as a freshman, you kind of learn the ropes of what it goes into broadcasting St. John's sports. And then as a sophomore, junior, and senior, you're at the forefront of calling some of the biggest games for the school's radio station that the campus has.
So when you started your first time on the radio, was it like, oh, this is like my passion right away? Or did it take some time for you getting used to getting into broadcasting?
No, it was right away. It was, this is what I want to do. Like I kind of always knew that. It's pretty funny. My first ever broadcast for St. John's, I believe it was my sophomore year. And it was the men's basketball season opener at home against New Orleans. And I wasn't like scheduled to do the game. And one of the sports directors, who's still one of my good friends at the time, Joey Jarazinka, he was supposed to do the game, but he worked in, he was like an intern for the athletic communications. So he had to work, do his intern stuff. He couldn't broadcast the game. And like a day or two before the game, he's like, oh, by the way, he didn't even ask. He was like, oh, you're calling the game. It's like, okay. And then like your first game, you're researching every single aspect of each team. And I knew a fair amount about St. John's just from following the team as the years prior, but New Orleans, I didn't know anything about New Orleans men's basketball team. So you're searching every detail of all time about the program, about each player. So like that as you do anything your first time, you always want to be overly prepared, and you kind of just get shell shocked by the moment. But once it gets into it, it's just a game. It's just a basketball game. It's really fun.
So over prepared. That's what I was. I know, Keegan, I think I'd say the first time you called a game, you were overly prepared.
Yeah, well, so I had 3 weeks prior, and I was almost in the same situation at you, but I wasn't like you are doing the game. The other color guy called out sick, and they put a post on Facebook, and it was my mom who responded to it saying, do you want to do it? And then the next thing I know, I get a call from Tyler, who Brady and I have gotten to know well over the last 2.5 years. And yeah, that's how it all started for me.
Yeah.
I had like 2 weeks. Again, it was, I don't know why you didn't get asked to do basketball before I did, because you were technically we're with Swansea Cable Access down here in Massachusetts. And it's 2019, I think it's before COVID, right? It was like Thanksgiving, like a couple weeks after Thanksgiving, whatever. knew a guy who needed a color commentator, and they recommended me for it. I had never done. I've always wanted to do this. I had no experience whatsoever. And we just fell into it. Got to work with Keegan. We did a lot of remote broadcasts in 2021, particularly basketball. And then tomorrow we're calling the round of 32 of the MIAA Division 4 state baseball tournament. So really, really looking forward to that.
Everybody has a story. It's
Right.
pretty funny.
Started as like, what were we, Key? We like barely knew each other. We were like, oh, you're just a kid from Somerset.
Oh yeah,
this
because
weird
our
short
first
kid from
game, it
Case,
was
right?
me, you, and Tyler.
And then look at this. We're talking to a guy from St. John's, which I think is really cool. So enough about us. It's about you. You're, as mentioned before, you're with the NFHS network. So what would you say is the biggest difference between high school sports and college athletics?
Well, I mean, I think it's a lot. I think first, just what is available to you. I mean, whether you're doing a Division I, Division II, or Division III college game, I mean, there's the school still has a sports information department. It still has facts on all the players. It still has stats, and all that. High school, like, unless you do multiple games of a specific team, which fortunately sometimes I'm lucky enough to do, you kind of build up your own stats, and you can look back to, say, for a baseball game, you look back on your score sheet, and you go back and you can get stats that way. But I think that's one of the biggest things is that in college, no matter what division you're doing, you have stats and information readily available. And in high school, you have to kind of start digging for them. And another one, and I'm sure you guys might know this, if you're doing high school things yourself, is it's not always press box available at different fields or at different schools you're going to. Sometimes for baseball, you're stuck in center field, which isn't bad, but and I guess in the winter or late fall, early winter for football, you're layering up, and you're sometimes you're out in the middle of the crowd. So those are the two biggest things, is that in college there's typically always stats and information available, and most of the time for college you're secluded and in a press box. And I always feel like in high school it's awkward when you're broadcasting like in the middle of like the parents section, like I just, for whatever reason, I just had like that. No matter what, people can hear you. Even at college, if you're like press row or in a booth, people can still hear you. People are listening to you. People can hear you. But I just feel like broadcasting in the middle of like a parent section is a little awkward.
You, at least at a parent section, have more experience when you did hockey for Somerset Berkeley Regional High School.
Well, I was up on the second level. Most of the parents were downstairs, but we had like the old school hockey players, like past graduates. They were all up on the second level with me, and they were all just looking at me like, okay.
Hey, but when you're calling Big East basketball on FS1 one day with Kevin Connelly, and they're not, you know what? They'll look back and they'll be like, oh yeah, I remember when he started.
Exactly.
But when we did basketball for Joseph Case High School, we were on, so our the gym that we did has a section of bleachers with just the fans, and then it has another section of bleachers on the opposite side, where that's a kind of like an overflow section for fans, and that's where the teams are. So we would sit behind in the last row of those bleachers behind one of the teams. So it's like you were secluded from the masses, but at the same time, you really weren't, because if you say something, the coach doesn't, and this has happened before. We had a coach from Bourne High School, which is down Cape Cod. I guess we were talking too loud. 30 seconds into the game, Kevin. Guy looks back and he goes, I'm trying to talk to my players. I can't understand them. You need to quiet down. And I'm like, what?
Yeah.
Okay. So it was like, that was awful. Football.
I've had similar experiences to that, but I won't get into it and share my opinion on that.
All right. Football, we were secluded. We had a awful press box, but unfortunately, you know what? It's something's better than nothing.
Oh, absolutely.
And then we're gonna find out baseball. You've done a couple baseball games this year. I haven't. Where were you? First baseline? Keegan?
Yeah, I did. I was on the first baseline. We did
Well,
one
that's
game
not
on the third baseline, but I like the first baseline better.
honestly, because that's not bad.
No, it's not.
All right. Um, your forefront is St. John's. Let's dive right into them. I'm going to start with the men's basketball program. A mediocre season, I guess, is how we could put it last year for the Red Storm. Mike Anderson, his third season, high expectations. I mean, Posh Alexander, Julian Champagny led the way. They were at stellar seasons. I thought Julian Champagny was going to be Big East Player of the Year. He wasn't, but that's all right. They bring in a guy by the name of Andre Curbelo, who popped off for Illinois this year. How do you see him meshing with Posh Alexander?
Well, I mean, I think in a perfect world, it'll go perfectly and they'll combine to be one of the best backcourt defensive duos in the country. But I mean, you look at them and like they kind of have the same game. Like,
Right.
can't really shoot well, will guard you 94 feet, will be a pest 94 feet, really good passers, and create for others. So I think if your starting backcourt are both less than 25% 3-point shooters, it's not tough to sell because of the firepower both bring. But I think the what they're going to try and do is play Posh off the ball more often than not, which they tried to incorporate a little bit this year, although they were a better team when he had the ball in his hands. But that's my early intel on how I think they'll play it. I think both start. I think both play over 30 minutes just because they're both that good. But I think ideally for them is if they can just raise the shooting numbers a little bit, but continue to be that playmaker all around level point guard, I think the duo will work.
So you're seeing like you want more offensively than defense. Like that's not saying you don't want defensively, but you're looking for more on offense.
Yeah, I mean, this year on offense, I mean, they were fine. I mean, yes, they could have been better shooting wise. I think for what Mike Anderson is known in his up-tempo pressing style defense, it also contributes to, well, you're so aggressive trying to pressure, sometimes it leaves you open on the weak side for an easy basket or a corner three. I mean, the way he runs his defense, the corner 3-pointers, you're very susceptible there. So I think just this year, the expectations that they had with a first team all conference player, a player who just won freshman of the year and defensive player of the year. And then you added a couple of high major transfers and how the season panned out wasn't great. But this year, I mean, they don't have that excuse. I mean, yes, they did lose Champagny and Aaron Wheeler, but I mean, they basically returned everybody else. They only lost Steph Smith and Tariq Coburn to graduation. They didn't have anyone transfer out of the program, and you added a couple of players that could be first team all league players in Curbelo and DePaul transfer David Jones. So they're going to have the continuity. They're going on a foreign trip to the Dominican Republic, I believe late July, early August. So the chemistry issues aren't going to be an excuse. The new players aren't going to be an excuse. And the people they added aren't mid-major players. They competed and thrived at major universities.
Yeah, you're not really losing anybody. Steph Smith was a grad transfer, I believe, from Vermont, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not sure about Coburn, but I want to dive into David Jones because it's in a way it's like, all right, out with Champagny, fortunately, who I believe graduated.
He left as a junior.
Oh, that's right. Okay, no, all right, my bad. And then David Jones, who I feel like wasn't given enough attention at DePaul, because DePaul doesn't get a lot of national attention. But I think he fits this system, like you were saying. They think he fits it really, really well. He's not Julian Champagny, but he's a similar guy who I think could be a solid 15 points per game.
Yeah, I mean, you said it perfectly because DePaul doesn't get that national attention, and in a larger aspect, the Big East doesn't get that national attention, which I mean, I don't get. I mean, yes, all their games are on Fox, but if you turn on ESPN and put on College Game Day, they're not talking about
They
the
don't
Big
talk
East.
about the Big East.
And even when Villanova, I mean, they went back to a Final Four this year when they were in the midst of 2 national championships in 3 years. Like you still put on ESPN and when they talk college basketball, they're still not talking about Villanova or the Big East, which I think Creighton might be a top 10 team in the country this year. I think Creighton's going to be that good, but the Big East doesn't get that national attention, and a bottom team in the Big East certainly isn't going to get that national attention either. But yeah, I think David Jones fits perfectly. I mean, he has the athleticism to play in this system. Again, you'd want the shooting numbers to be a little bit better. He's a really streaky shooter. I don't have the stats in front of me, but it was really weird. He would like say over a 5-game span, he'd be a 15% 3-point shooter. And I'm not joking with that. And then you move to the next 7 games and he'd be a 40% 3-point shooter. And then you move to the next 6 games and be back down to 20% from 3-point range. It's really bizarre how streaky of a shooter he was last year at DePaul. But I think he slides in perfectly to that 3-4 spot. I think he could be a stretch 4. I think he's probably more comfortable as a 3. And also he has a really good relationship with Andre Curbelo. He played internationally with the Fordham transfer Joel Soriano, who's going into his 2nd year at St. John's. So again, I think the chemistry this year, just with the players and how they know each other, and that's not to say the chemistry was bad last year. It felt like it was a really good locker room, much better than the year before, and that's due to Champagne's leadership. But just on the court, they just didn't mesh well. And I think that's kind of the big point that has to be changed this year. They have to fit well on the court together.
I agree just about everything, but I do see David Jones again more of comfortable as a 3. I mean, his listed position is a small forward, but again, I think he could definitely. I mean, he's 6'6", so if they want to go small, no, I mean,
No, it's not small at all. But
compared to our heights, yes, that's not small, but no, I definitely see.
You know what I mean, though.
Yeah, no, I know, I understand it. As a stretch 3 or 4, I mean, I feel like he's a good rebounder. At least when he played Providence, it was him and Jermaine Johnson that really gave. I was at the Providence DePaul game when they played at the Dunk, and it was a game that went into overtime and early shouldn't have gone into overtime, but whatever. DePaul really gave guys like Nate Watson and Ed Croswell a run for their money every single time the ball hit off the rim went in the air. They're so aggressive. I think that's what David Jones is going to be great. He's again a perfect fit for St. John's. Mike Anderson's lucky to have him. So I want to know more with like you as a play-by-play announcer. Have you found anyone? It's kind of more of like an inspiration. Anyone who really like helped you, hone in on your skills or anything?
So at St. John's, there's a couple of sports broadcasting classes. I have to give credit to Mark Renee. I've actually called. It's pretty funny. We did a St. John's baseball game together earlier this year, and that was pretty cool. I mean, like he's the sports director at 1010 Wins here in New York. He does a host of other stuff in terms of sports broadcasting as well. But in terms of the way our schedules work out, we ended up doing a St. John's Marist baseball game together. And I mean, that's really fun. I mean, he's a guy that's your teacher for a semester in college. And then a couple years later, you end up doing a college baseball game together. And then I think just along the way, it's just friends you meet and you give each other pointers. Hey, I think this would work really well. Or, hey, you tried this and I don't think it really came across that well. But yeah, I mean, I talked about Joey Jarzenka. He's another sports broadcaster that I met at St. John's. He was the sports director for the school's radio station when I was I think that was when I was a freshman and a sophomore. So yeah, it's just meeting people along the way, different broadcasters that you meet in the field. Say like at high school games, sometimes we're there broadcasting and another company is also there broadcasting, and you just start talking and meeting and you exchange numbers. And I think that's just making those connections. I mean, that's how life works. You have to make connections all along the way.
I know Keegan has one question that he asks every announcer that we have on here.
Oh, yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah, so usually I ask, like, if you weren't into announcing, like, what would you be doing for a career? Did you have a second choice when you were at St. John's, or a different path if broadcasting wasn't going to work out?
I guess I did, but I don't think I really did. I mean, I was a journalism broadcasting major, and my minor was sports management. So I kind of like had my chips all in the middle of the table. Some summers, so like school gets out early May, whatever, and for a month or two, I would be like a substitute teacher just to do something on the side. So I don't know if I would say I would be in teaching, because I mean, talk about something that can get frustrating, and if you don't love it, then you're, and not that I said I didn't love it, but I don't know if, I think that kind of opened my eyes to maybe you don't want to go into teaching. But I don't know, maybe if I wasn't in broadcasting, I feel like I'd have to be something else in sports. I don't know if that's in marketing, if that's in, pick something else, but I feel like sports have been thrown at me since I was little. So I just feel like it would be something in sports. What do I know what it would be? Probably not, but maybe something on like the business side or something like that in sports.
Did the students at least like you when you were substitute teaching?
No, I did. I did, but I think I think I was in kindergarten the two not summers, the two last months of the year, and I can definitely see why teachers sometimes at night or get home and they're a little frustrated.
God bless you.
Yeah.
God bless you. All right. No, seriously, like my mom's a school teacher. She works with kindergarten through second graders, and I don't know how she does it. I give her all the credit in the world, because I couldn't do it.
Yeah,
if I'm gonna teach, it's gonna be like middle school, high school.
Yeah, that's what I said. Yeah, I had a new appreciation for teachers once those couple of years wrapped up.
Yeah. So I'm gonna take today to acknowledge Keegan Hamlet for graduating from Somerset Berkeley Regional High School this past weekend. We've mentioned it before. I'm absolutely going to mention it right now and 1,000 times more. Keegan is off to Dean College in Franklin, Massachusetts in the fall to study what else? Sports broadcasting.
What else?
I'm going to be led by the great John Rook. I'm so excited for you.
I'm excited too. John Rook's the man. We all know that. 40 plus years of announcing and PA announcing. And I had the summer camp with him 2 years ago. He knows his stuff, and he's going to be a great help.
So proud of you. I'm so happy for you. I just cannot wait to see what your future brings at Dean. I know, again, from what I've seen online, the internships there, as well as what I'm learning now with St. John's, are tremendous. At least, especially with baseball too, because I'm learning that a lot of guys from Dean are landing internships with those collegiate summer baseball leagues.
Yes.
Like the Cape Cod, which now, I just want to say Cape Cod League. Did you ever do the Cape Cod League, Kevin?
I did not do the Cape Cod League. I only did two innings of a Brockton Rocks game, because the guy who was doing the color announcing had to go pick up some subs for us for after the game.
Nice.
And I was shadowing Brett, who was the main guy at the time, and he's going to be a junior next year. So at least I already have.
Oh, he's with Brockton now. Brett Shops. That's right. Okay.
Yeah.
Kevin, were you ever in the Cape Cod League, or did you stick to St. John's?
No, I neme broadcasted any Cape Cod League games, but I can tell you I have been to a handful of Cape Cod League games, because when I was younger, me and my parents used to go up to Cape Cod for a week every summer. And I mean, I was little, and I mean, I probably couldn't tell. I probably saw 3-4 major league players. I couldn't tell you who they were because I was about 3-4 years old, but I do remember going to a handful of Cape Cod League games when I was younger. But no, I never went up there for a summer to work.
All right, so I'm gonna end us. We've got 10 minutes left, Zoom is telling me. But one story about the Cape Cod League, and then we'll sign off. 15 minutes away from my house in a city called Fall River, Massachusetts, we have a batting cage. We have a couple batting cages, but there's one, right, that is owned by a guy. I think his name is Sean. I could be wrong. So I went in to hit, and we were talking, we wanted to know if this guy had ever gone professional, this Sean guy, because he gives the hitting lessons and he like fixes people's, their swings and all that, and they just become better ball players under him. So we were leaving one time, and Sean's at the front desk and he owns the place. So we said, hey, you said, did you ever like get drafted, go pro? He said, no. He said, funny story. I played in the Cape Cod League. That's the closest I ever got. My shortstop, I played second base. My shortstop was Justin Turner. So this guy knew Justin Turner, which obviously now he's with the Los Angeles Dodgers and all that. And I was like, what? That's awesome. He was like, yeah, he's a great guy, but it was like, it stinks because everybody on that team got drafted. Guess who didn't? Me.
Sean.
I was like, and I felt awful for him. But at the same time, I was like, like 20 plus other guys around you just got drafted. That's not necessarily to say they made the big leagues, because again, we see years like there's a guy from the oh my god, what team was it? I think it was either the Tigers or the Cubs, who was a FedEx driver. And all these years later, he made his MLB debut. Daniel Bard, we saw last year, 13 years in the minors, finally got back to the big. So the lesson we're going to take away from today is to never give up on your dreams, because Kevin Conley and Keegan Hamlet are two perfect examples of that. And that'll conclude our episode of the Sports Saga podcast. If you liked what you saw, please consider liking, sharing, subscribing, and following us on social media using the link tree in the description below. And give Al Dias a call if you're in need of an electrician. His phone number and contact info also in the description below. For Mr. St. John's, Kevin Conley, and Keegan Hamlin, I'm Brady Kudo saying so long, and we'll see you next time.